The setup for tonight from last week, if you just got here, the title itself says it all, unusual. Therefore, with the net of it is this, that we are worshiping, walking in relationship with, an unusual God. There's nothing ordinary or normal or mediocre or average about God. He is extraordinary in every way. And we who have been created by him, have been brought back into a relationship with him through Jesus Christ. That's what we've been singing about all night long. And then have been filled up with his Spirit, given amazing gifts, opportunities, abilities, and then placed on a mission in life. We shouldn't be usual either. Our lives should reflect something extraordinary because we're in a relationship with an extraordinary God. Life seems to pull down, doesn't it? Life always seems to pull down, that gravitational pull to the lowest common denominator. And then we get on the treadmill like everybody else in life. I do it and you do it, we all do it. And the treadmill goes like this, the weekend's over. Well, our weekend isn't over quite yet. We got a great night of worship. The Falcons are gonna play tonight. You got a little party going on at the house. And then the weekend's over. And then you gotta get up and get going tomorrow. And Monday, it's like, it's Monday. Monday's over. Thank goodness, Tuesday. We made it to Tuesday. Wednesday's hump day. Congratulations, it's hump day. We're fired up. We're halfway to Friday. And then it's thank God it's Friday. We did it. Whew. It's the weekend. And if we're not careful, we settle into the mentality that ordinary people have, which is we're just basically on a 5-day cycle to the weekend, another 5-day cycle to the weekend, and a 5-day cycle to the weekend. And the whole idea is you just survive. You get through it. You just do what you have to do, but then you get to the weekend again. And that's really not what God's calling from you and from me, because he's extraordinary, so he's asking for extraordinary from you and me. So he's not looking for ordinary followers, people who say, what's the least you have to do to get by? What's the lowest amount you have to do to make it at your job? What's the smallest amount you can turn in and still pass? That's what I want to do, because wow, that will reflect the God that I love, worship, and serve to Babylon or to the world around me. Now, our messages tonight and last week take place in Babylon, which, as you know, was kind of the cultural hub of Mesopotamia in its day. Can't go back there, but I'd love to. But here's what happened, short story, okay? No review, just a short story. In Jerusalem, Jehoiakim was king of Judah. Now that's God's people, so you're thinking that's good stuff, right? No, Jehoiakim has a 10-verse epitaph or history summary in Scripture, whichever way you want to look at it. It begins like this. You can go back and look at it in Kings. It says, Jehoiakim became the king of Judah when he was 25 years old. So we'll give him something for the fact that he was only 25. And then here's what it says about Jehoiakim. Are you ready for this? And Jehoiakim did evil in the sight of the Lord, just as his father had done evil in the sight of the Lord. Therefore, there are only 10 verses about Jehoiakim, and nobody here really knows anything about him, because his model was, my dad kind of did evil in the sight of the Lord, and therefore that's the way I know how to be a king. So when I get in power, I'm going to do evil in the eyes of the Lord. And so what God did was a little course correction for Jehoiakim and all of his people. He allowed this evil ruler, Nebuchadnezzar, to come from the evil empire, Babylon, to come and take control of Jerusalem. And eventually they just said to Jehoiakim, you're going to be under our control, one of our vassals, if you will. But then Jehoiakim kind of got all fired up and thought, we're going to go up against Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar didn't like it. They came in from Babylon. They ransacked Jerusalem, ransacked the temple of God, took some of the serving pieces from the temple of God and some of the best young men of Judah back to Babylon. They looked for the guys that were the sharpest, the smartest, the most aptitude, the most potential, the most upside. They picked them out and said, we're taking you, along with these serving pieces from the temple, we're taking you back to Babylon, and we're going to retrain you. These young men, it said, from the nobility and from the royal family, we're going to transplant you in Babylon. We're going to retrain you. We're going to give you Babylonian names. We're going to teach you Babylonian culture. And then we're going to tap in to all that expertise and upside potential that you've got for the good of what's going on in Babylon, because we're the center of culture right now. We're the center of architecture. We're the center of innovation. We're the center of power. And so we're going to tap into all your potential for the good of Babylon. And that's what's happening to some of you tonight. It's not the message tonight, but it's just one of those little things you can take away. Some of you are in Babylon, not by choice, but by the fact that you have done evil in the sight of the Lord. You just got off track. You just went crazy out there. And God said, hello, we're going to have to do a little course correction here. Not because you wanted a course correction, but because God did. Because the weird thing is tonight, God loves me more than I love me. He loves you more than you love you. God is more committed to my spiritual well-being than I am. And so sometimes when we get way off course, God says, I've got to kind of correct things here. And the way I'm going to correct it is we're going to leave Jerusalem and we're going to go to Babylon. And that's the way that I'm going to bring your hearts back around to me. And then I'm going to bring you back to Jerusalem as my people. And so here's these 4 boys of Babylon that get stuck in the middle. Daniel, and as they got their Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're stuck in Babylon now because Jehoiakim was a really bad king. And Nebuchadnezzar has come in and taken control. But we talked about last week the fact that when they got there, the king said, hey, I'm going to put you in a 2-year apprenticeship program. Starting out, I'm going to put you on a new diet. You're going to eat from the king's table and drink the king's wine because I want you to be fit. And Daniel was like, I'm on the Daniel diet, so I can't do that. And I got to stick with the Daniel diet. It's been working for me. So a little underling decides, okay, we'll give you a 10-day trial, 10 days. They go before the king, and he says, whoa, you guys look better than everybody else, so you can stay on your little Daniel diet. So their first test, right, in Babylon of whether they were going to compromise or be faithful to the ways of God, God comes through for them. They put God's name on the line and God comes through. At the end of the day, they actually look better than the people who have been eating the king's food. I love that. There is nothing wrong with you and me looking better than the other people in the world because we ought to. I mean, for one thing, we ought to have a better well-being. We ought to have a better outlook. We ought to have a better peace of mind because we got God with us, in us, and on our side. We ought to stand out, for crying out loud, should we not? Because we are connected to, related to, and filled with the Spirit of the living God. So we should not be ordinary, normal, middle of the road, middle of the pack, lowest common denominator kind of people. We should be exceptional people. And Daniel and the other boys of Babylon, they stood out. And you know why? They led with their excellence. When they came before the king, they didn't say, hey, can we just tell you about the Daniel diet? The Daniel diet's amazing, man. It's vegetables and water for 10 days. We look better than your guys. That's because of God, man. No, they just came and said, you want to look at us? Okay, look at us. They said, turn around. Okay. Imagine how humiliating that was. Okay, let's see you flex. And all right, let's see it. And they're like, okay, they look pretty good. I mean, you got to just think about Scripture for a minute, okay? You got to get out of that old, well, they came before the king, and the king looked at them, and they looked better than all the other young men in the training apprenticeship program of King Nebuchadnezzar. No, they rolled them up there and said, okay, turn them around. Okay, number 7, step forward. Number 9, please step back. It's humiliating. It's Babylon. It's not where they want to be. But even in humiliating Babylon, not where they want to be, they step forward and they don't lead with faith. They lead with, you want to look at us? Okay, look at us. You want us to turn around? We'll turn around because we look better than the people that have been eating from the king's table. What we're trying to say is it's not unspiritual to strive for excellence. These two things are not mutually exclusive. We're not talking about values of the heart here. We're not talking about a heart that says, I want to be great. I'm going to be great. I'm going to be a somebody. We're not talking about values and attitudes of the heart. We're talking about aptitude and the exceptional opportunity we have to max out the abilities that God has given to us. And there's no split here tonight. You can still follow Jesus and desire to be excellent. I know sometimes those things get a little goofy and you're like, no, we're supposed to be humble, and humble means we're supposed to be at the back, and being at the back means somebody else is supposed to go forward. That's all attitudes of the heart. God doesn't mind if you make a perfect score on the SAT. He doesn't mind if you're the leading salesperson in your region. He doesn't mind if you go and you get the best review of all the teachers at your school. He doesn't mind that at all. In fact, he rather would love that because God knows everybody can be great at something. And that's the goal. The goal is not to live life and say, I was average. The goal is to live life and go, I found my place. I found that zone I could get in. Or maybe a zone found me because I ended up in Babylon. But I just chose where I was to be great at what I did. And excellence led the way. Excellence opened the conversation for character and faith. It was conduct first, character and faith behind, fueling that excellence. Not excellence for my sake, but excellence for the sake of the name of Jesus. And that's where we got to get to, right? That's a new way of thinking. We got to lose this idea, this mentality that Christians are second rate in the world, that we can't cut it in the world. When I went to seminary, this is many years ago, I went to a huge seminary. There were like thousands and thousands and thousands of students there. The biggest seminary, I think, in the world at the time I went there. And you meet so many people, and I'm not knocking anybody, but you meet so many people like, why are you here? And you'd be surprised how many people didn't say, because I know God has his hand on my life. I know God has placed me in motion. I know God has a calling for me in his people, with his people and in his church. You meet a lot of people say, well, I don't know. You know, I just kind of grew up in church and I really wasn't good at anything else, so I thought I'd come here. And you're like, wow, this does not bode well for the future of the church. And it doesn't bode well for what the church has been inspiring in people. God's plan is not counter to our becoming excellent at something. And we've got to somehow move away from this thought that, it's like, I'm not very good at that, but hey, I am a believer. I know I kind of only did a halfway job at that, but hey, I know I'm going to go to heaven when I die, and that's kind of my fallback plan. And God's like, that's just really not firing me up. I want to see that spirit in you, that same spirit's in me. When God created the world, he didn't go, all right, let's think about stars. I don't know, I'm kind of tired today. We did all that other stuff yesterday. Oh, man. Okay, put one over there. That's good. That's good. They don't know if there's going to be 1 or 100 billion. Let's just put one up there. It's bright. No, that wasn't God's heart, right? God was like going over the top. God was like demonstrating his character, his beauty, his creativity, and he was showing what excellence looks like when it's on display. And that's what God's calling forth from you and what God's calling forth from me. That's the kind of people God wants us to be. He wants you to go to your job, go to your class, go to your school, go to wherever you're going, and go in the door thinking, I'm going to be good at this. And maybe this isn't the thing I'm going to be good at, but I'm going to do my best at this until I find the thing that I'm really going to be great at, and then I'm really going to be great at that. There isn't this big division between, the sacred and the spiritual. We talk about that all the time, but it's not like, well, I have my job, but then I have my small group, and that's what's really important to God. God doesn't care about my job. Therefore, at my job today, I'm actually spending quite a bit of time at my job today online preparing for my Bible study that I'm going to lead tonight. Now, my boss doesn't know this, of course, because he's not here right now, and I've got a computer that doesn't face where anybody else can see. So no one knows that I'm using the company's time and the boss's money to prepare for my Bible study tonight, but I know God would be excited because he doesn't get a hoot about the straws that we sell, and he really cares about the Bible study that I'm going to lead tonight, so God would be happy that I'm doing that. Or in some other case where I'm supposed to be working and doing this stuff, but I really missed that great podcast, so I've downloaded my favorite speaker because I only heard 2 sermons this weekend, wanted to get one more in this week, so now I'm listening, and they think I'm transcribing the stuff I'm supposed to be transcribing happily, but no, I'm listening to this pastor that I like to listen to on my podcast, and I'm telling you, God would break into that scene, I believe, and say, hey, you should shut the podcast off. And you should click out of the Bible study because you signed up, you signed into an agreement, you signed a contract, you stepped into the equation to say that you were going to do a job, you're going to receive a wage, you're going to receive a salary in equal proportion to the work that you've been doing, and somebody's put their resources on the line, somebody's counting on you, and you've stepped into a relationship, a contract with people to help something go forward, and you really should lean into that today. I believe God is saying this, I believe He said, I'd rather you shut that off, you can work on the Bible study on your time, but now you're at work. Just do your job great. That's pretty weird, isn't it? How quiet it is in here right now. I would have thought some one person would have amened at the end of that. At least a business owner who gets it. A manager, a supervisor would have said, keep on going with that. Just go another half hour on that right there and then give the invitation. But we have settled, haven't we, into this thinking that God likes one thing and He doesn't like the other thing. And God says, I want you to be great at whatever it is that you're doing. Everyone knows that Steve Jobs passed away this past week, and if you don't know who Steve Jobs is, I can't really help you. Passion City Church is probably not the church for you if you do not know who Steve Jobs is. So that's just a footnote right there, okay? There's a lot of great churches in our city. I'm sure they'd love to receive you and your family. I don't know about Steve Jobs' faith journey. And everything I do know from parenthetical sources tells me he did not have this devotion to Jesus. He was part of another faith tradition. But Steve Jobs changed our lives. And I have a friend named Andy Crouch who wrote a book called Culture Making, and Andy wrote a commentary on Steve Jobs' death this week, and I just excerpted a little bit of it for us tonight. He said, he pursued excellence. And in particular, he pursued beauty. In every market Apple entered, it did things more cleanly, elegantly, and beautifully than its competitors. It's not too much to credit Steve Jobs with the return of beauty to the center of our culture's aspirations. Now, there's always going to be somebody with a pushback and say, well, he did all that, but, where was he spiritually? That's a great conversation. That's another point, okay? The point here is the guy's legacy in my life and in your life, and maybe you're not. Maybe you're one of those PC people, and that's all you think there is in the world, and you're going to buy a Zune no matter what, you're just going to get that thing and rock it as far as you can until they quit making those, that's fantastic. You're going to get a Samsung tablet because you're just that kind of person. Well, congratulations, that's awesome. I'm just telling you that at the end of the day, life has been changed, not because you own an iPod or an iPad or an iPhone or an Apple computer, if you download a song from iTunes or some other kind of Apple inspiration, because beauty, form has come and merged with technology, where computers were just computers before, now they're pieces of art. Before it was just, here's something to listen to music on. Now it's like, that's cool, it looks cool, just sit it up on the shelf in the living room. It looks awesome, we'd like to have one of those. And it's that merging power. And I wondered how many people are sitting at Passion City Church tonight that maybe God's calling on your life uniquely. Your spiritual place will be the fuel in the engine. Your relationship with Jesus will be the fire that moves you towards excellence. But the end of your life, the course of your life will be that you change the direction of culture. That you change the direction of culture either locally where you are or globally for all of us in the world, because that's the kind of aspirations that are latent in us. No, we're not all Steve Jobs, but we're all Steve Jobs of something. And we all have incredible, exceptional, unusual potential that is latent in our hearts and in our minds because of Christ. I love the way Martin Luther King said this in a speech. And we got Todd Peterson sitting over here. We're talking about going to the University of Georgia today. I always think about him when that comes up. Todd kicked at the University of Georgia. And I can't think of any job in life more high stress than that. You got to be a certain kind of individual to run out in a stadium full of 90,000 semi-intoxicated people who are barking. I mean, you got to have, and you're a teenager, right? And you're running out there and everybody's looking at you, and a dude's gonna hike a leather football and stick it on a tee, and you gotta kick it 35, 45, 47, 51 yards through these little bitty yellow poles that are sticking up in the air. Todd went on to be a player in the NFL, lastly with the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm just thinking, that's crazy. Georgia Dome, rocking, pumping, and here he comes onto the field. I watched him play at games at the Georgia Dome where the game's on the line. And here comes the kicker. He got all these guys who pounded each other and bolted over each other and, slammed into each other for a couple hours. And here comes this one guy, and it all comes down to that. And you got to think, what kind of commitment, what kind of dedication, what kind of desire for excellence. You just can't go out there and say, well, one time I kicked it and it went through there. The other time I kicked it and it hit that popcorn guy over there. That was weird. And kicked one, it hit the back of that big guy, number 74 right there. Just hit him right in the back of that. You got to have a certain kind of passion. But come on, when the game is over and you and I go home, a team of people descend into that stadium. You've seen them coming in, right? So you're home now, you're tucking your kids in, or you're home getting your things ready for the next day. They're still down there. And they're sweeping and cleaning, and then a couple times through the season, they're hosing. They got big pressure washers in there, and they're cleaning that. And here's the deal. In God's economy, there's no difference between Todd Peterson and the guy that's the coordinator of that cleaning crew. Because you want Todd Peterson to walk on the field and go, I got this. And you want that cleaning lady to come in, or that cleaning man, or that young person to come in and go, I got this. This is section 109. Section 109, we'll rock it out tonight. Not 108, not 107, 109, friends. This is where it's going to happen right here. I'm going to clean this bad boy like God himself is going to sit in one of these seats. I mean, that is a different view. You're like, no, you don't think like that because God doesn't care. It's kicking the field goal, wins the game, cleaning the stadium really doesn't matter. God doesn't care about that. Look, God cares about everything that you do. So Martin Luther King says, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as a Michelangelo painted, or a Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the host of heaven and earth will pause to say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. Now, I'm not talking about excellence just so that you and I can get a prize. I'm talking about more. This is what I'm talking about. It's more than a sense of accomplishment, drive, or determination. Not just that. Some of you have that. But a deep-seated confidence in the overarching sovereign plans of an unusual God, and a desire to use the gifts he has entrusted to each of us to the very height of our ability as a reflection of him in a world that is either ambivalent about success or self-absorbed for temporary ends. And that's what was going on with the boys of Babylon. So they didn't eat the food. They turned out where they were really good. And then look what happened in verse 17. God rewards them for their step of faithfulness. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. Man, I wish I'd gotten that when I was their age. And Daniel, next verse, could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Daniel 1:17. Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. So they were already sharp. They put God to the test and were faithful, and then God just poured more favor on them. There's a beautiful principle in that too, isn't it? We take a step, God takes a step. We take a step, God takes a step. You don't ever just sit back at home and go, okay, one day God's just going to give me all this favor, and then I'm going to go change the world. No, the favor comes as you step in obedience to him. And so now they've got all this heightened understanding of all kinds of literature and learning. And Daniel, look what he got. He could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. Daniel, all of a sudden waking up going, hey man, I'm understanding dreams. This is crazy. I didn't used to do this before, but I'm getting dreams now. You had a dream? Okay, tell me your dream. I'll tell you what it means. I'm getting how to understand visions and dreams. You're thinking, what good is that going to do anybody? You're away from home. You're out of Jerusalem. You're in Babylon. You're in this apprenticeship program, and you can understand dreams. Big deal. Chapter 2, verse 1. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had, say it with me, dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So he summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. And God says, yeah, I'm ahead of you here, because before you started dreaming, I gave the ability to understand visions and dreams to Daniel as a payoff and extra favor for his faithfulness to me and trusting me with the path that I'd put him on in the first place. So now Daniel's like, hello, I can understand visions and dreams. And now later in the story, the king has dreams. That's because our first point tonight is simply this, that God is using your present circumstances to make you more useful for later roles in his unfolding story. Isn't that cool? God's using our present circumstances to make us more useful in his story. In other words, there is no wasted time with God. This is awesome, man. This has got to be the greatest news of all tonight. I hope somebody gets fired up about this. There is no wasted time. You are not holding your breath, marching in time, treadmilling it out for a little while, hoping later in life you get to do something cool. No, right now, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever the circumstance, whatever Babylon you're in right now, God is working something in you in that moment that he plans to unfold in a way in a later season of life, and you're going to look back and go, unbelievable, God was preparing me for something I didn't have any idea about. Now, I'm semi-old, so I can tell you this on good authority. I mean, all the young people here, you got to trust me on this one, okay? You got to trust me on this one. There is no day that you're just going, nobody sees what I'm doing. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. I can't believe I have to work here. I can't believe I'm in this class. I can't believe I'm stuck in this deal. I can't believe I'm over here. This is a waste of time. And God's going, oh no, it's not. Because I'm doing something in you right here. And in about 2 years from now, you're going to go, no way. I'm so glad God had me in that place. You said, Louis, I will never thank God for being in the place I'm in right now. I know I will never thank him for being in this place. Take it from the old guy. There's no wasted time with God. And as he's preparing you to put you in another place at another time, always some of the results that are going to happen over here are these, that when you come in that new place, like interpreting the dream, you're going to be a blessing to the authorities above you. You're going to bring deliverance to more people than just yourself. It's going to be good news for everybody when you step in that role, and it's going to glorify the God who lives in you. And that's what happened in this story in chapter 2. Can I just give you the short version of it? Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, calls all these guys in, and he says, okay, tell me my dream. And they're like, okay, or interpret the dream, and they're like, okay, tell us what did you dream about, and then we'll give you the interpretation, right? And he goes, no, you tell me the dream, and you interpret it. And they're like, ooh, this is new, this is hard. And he said, and by the way, if you can't do that, here's what's going to happen to you, okay? If you can't do that, I'm going to cut you into pieces. I mean, it'd be one thing if he said, I'm going to kill you, but I mean, he described how. I'm going to cut you into pieces, and I'm going to turn your house into rubble. So if you can't tell me both the dream and interpret the dream, I'm going to cut you into pieces and turn your house into rubble. So get busy. And they're like, oh man. So they're all looking at each other like, we kind of half make this stuff up anyway, but we don't want to take a shot. You can always tell them the interpretation, right? I believe that God is saying that such and such and such and such. And he's like, okay, I think that works. I mean, that's like the thing you read in the paper, right? You read that thing, you're like, yeah, that sounds kind of like something I'm going through right now. It sounds like something like everybody's going through right now. Have you ever read one that's not you? You're a Cancer, did you ever read the Sagittarius? And you're like, yeah, I'm kind of a little bit of that one too. No kidding. You're coming into an important relationship change. Oh, I sure am. I think I am. I mean, anybody can tell you what the dream means, but people put in the paper my boss's name. Then I'm paying attention, right? Larry is going to come in and talk to you this morning at 10:30. Okay, now I'm locked in. I'm paying attention. No, and so nobody can answer. In fact, they all get together. Listen to what they say. This is middle of the chapter. You don't have to look at it. They say, no one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among men. An opportunity arises for something unusual to happen. Well, king finds out they've all said, we can't do it, so he gives the order, kill them all, kill all of them. Well, all of them included the 4 boys of Babylon. And so pick it up in verse 14. So when Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. That's an important phrase right there. And he asked the king's officer, why did the king issue such a harsh decree? Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. And at this, Daniel went to the king and asked him for more time. He must have had favor on him because the king's already said, kill them all. You don't want to show up after the king has said, kill them all. Hello, I'm one of the ones you're going to cut to pieces and turn my house into rubble. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'd like to speak to the king if I can. He must have had some incredible favor. And he asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Now, I got to summarize all this, but it's incredible. I love that when Daniel went to Arioch, he did so with wisdom and tact. He didn't go in there like, guns a-blazing, all for Jesus. I mean, I'm just trying to help us understand, okay? That sometimes the best way to get ahead in the workplace, in the marketplace, in the streams of culture, in the stream of education is just to be great. That's the best way to get ahead. He didn't go in and say, well, I've heard you're going to kill everybody, but look at that. I got a Jesus button on. What do you think about that right there? How about that? How about them apples, everybody? No, he went to Arioch with wisdom and tact. That means he tried to use brain power, and he was skilled in the way that he negotiated the situation. Is that okay to celebrate that tonight? I mean, is there anybody here that you work with some people that, I hate to say this, but they're Christians, and every time something comes up, you're going, oh, no, not them again. They got no wisdom, and they got no tact. They're just rolling in and going, well, I'm a Christian, and I'll tell you what I think about that, and I'll tell you what God thinks about that, blah, blah. No. We don't want to know all that. Just wisdom and some tact. Maybe our company can get ahead. We can solve the problem. We can resolve the crisis. We can move forward just with some wisdom and some tact. Turn down the bumper stickers and turn up the tact. Thank you very much. I mean, I think there's a place and time to stand on your faith. Come on. We're about to turn the page, and it's right there. But there's also a place and time to go, Arioch, man, let me talk this through with you. Because my life is on the line, and the lives of a whole bunch of other people are on the line. And I don't need to roll in and go, I'm going to tell you about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Arioch. He said, let me use wisdom and tact, because I think I know how. And whatever he did worked because he got a hearing with the king. And whatever he did worked there because the king said, I'll give you more time. And he put this to the king and said, I'll do it. I need a little time, but I'll do it. And then immediately, look what happened. Verse 17, Daniel returned to his house. He explained the matter to his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. What Daniel didn't do was go home and go, I'm not going to sleep tonight because I just put my neck on the line and I got to figure this out. Daniel knew he couldn't figure it out. He knew when he said to the king that he was going to do it, he couldn't do it. But when he got back, he gathered in community his brothers. He didn't do this out in front of Nebuchadnezzar, but when he got back, he gathered his community together. He said, guys, let's get on our knees and pray, and let's pray to the God of heaven, and let's ask the God of heaven to reveal this mystery. Let's ask the God of heaven to do something unusual. Let's ask the God of heaven to break into our world here. Let's ask the God of heaven to get involved in this predicament that we're all in. And so verse 19 says, during the night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. And Daniel praised the God of heaven. And his prayer of praise is awesome. Of course he did, because he knew it didn't come from him. So he goes back to Nebuchadnezzar a little bit later in the chapter, and he goes to Nebuchadnezzar and he says, hey, I figured it out. I mean, I didn't figure it out, but I know what your dream is. And this is what he says in verse 27. Listen to the way he gives glory and credit to God without being obnoxious. He says, Daniel replied, no wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he is asked about. And the king's like, that's exactly right. That's why everybody's dying. But then listen to the way that he just slides this in. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. Okay, back it up. Okay, he's shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. And then he tells him about the dream. You saw a large statue. And the statue had 4 different sections. And then you saw something chipping at the bottom of it until the whole statue crumbled to the ground. And there was a large stone that got larger and larger and larger. And the king's like, that's it. And he goes, well, what it means is this. You're the top. You got the glory of the top right now. Another kingdom's coming and another one after that, another one after that. But then all of them are going down and you're going down with them. But the one that breaks them at the bottom will merge into a kingdom that will never go away. God bless you. I threw that in. That might not be what he said. And King Nebuchadnezzar, verse 46, fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor and ordered that an offering and incense be presented to him. And the king said to Daniel, surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery. And then he went to Nebuchadnezzar and he said, I want you to appoint my buddies, the boys of Babylon, as administrators over the provinces of Babylon. And Nebuchadnezzar said, it's done. It's done. See, God worked and he moved in. He blessed Nebuchadnezzar. You're thinking, God doesn't want to bless my company, my boss, and my supervisor. Yes, he does. God blesses people, answers the cries of people, answers the prayers and the dilemmas of people who don't even know him or honor him, like Nebuchadnezzar, and he may want to use you to do that. He blessed the authorities, he preserved the people, and then God got all the credit at the end of the day. Now, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't super smart because the chapter goes right on, and it says the very next phrase, crazy world in Babylon, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold 90 feet high. And you're thinking, hello? What part of this did you miss? This is where we need a flannel board, right? Do you remember the flannel board? This is the moment and the story where you just wish you had a flannel board. It's not the fastest arriving flannel board in the world. But do you remember the story where we're going? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. How many of you remember that from Vacation Bible School? Backyard Bible Club, Sunday school, a couple of nice teachers sat there. How many of you remember the flannel board? Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you this is the first flannel board you've ever laid eyes on in your life? No, hold them up high. I want to see. This is a brand new moment. This is Steve Jobs for you, man. This is a whole new day. People are going to have these at the house after tonight. Flannelboard.com. And so we kind of already, got the main story here. The main story is that they had the king's food. Apparently, it was a ham, and they had some wine. But Daniel didn't eat the king's food. But when the boys, we've sort of covered this already, right? When they went before the king, he examined them and he found them to be exceptional in quality. And so the scene changes now. And now to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they say, okay, we're going to put this idol up, this guy right here. We're going to put this guy up and you're going to bow down to him. This is chapter 3. So can I just summarize a little bit? When the trumpet plays, you hear the sound of the flutes, the other musicians, everybody bows down to the 90-foot idol. Nebuchadnezzar apparently didn't have a very good memory, and maybe it was that he saw a statue in his dream and he knew he was at the head, so he kind of forgot about the crumbling part and just said, let's just go for the statue. So he erects the statue. He says, when you hear the music, everybody bows down. But catch this. There are people who despised Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because of their faith. So if you're in a Babylonian context right now and you're being sort of knocked down or chipped at because of your faith, just know this tonight. I know it's not pleasant, but you're not the first person in that line. These guys were in that line before you. It says that other people knew that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not bowing down when the music played. Now, they're out there at their province is administrating Babylon. They're not in the king's living room doing this. They're just where they live. The trumpet sounds, the flutes play, the music sounds, they don't bow down. And so some people came to Nebuchadnezzar and said, hey, you know how you said that the statue was going up and people were bowing down, and if people didn't bow down, they were going to hear it from you. They were going to the fiery furnace. And so I just want to let you know there's a couple of guys not bowing down. This Shadrach dude, not bowing. Meshach, not bowing. Abednego, not bowing down. And Nebuchadnezzar thought, well, they just don't understand, so bring them here. So they bring in Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, why aren't they bowing down? Because, see, there's a place in time in your Babylon and my Babylon where you can make adjustments. There are things that are not black and white, they're not contradictory to God's word, that you can just adjust to. But then there are moments that come where things are contrary to the word of God. And your decision either is, I'm going to do what you asked me to do, or I'm going to do what God clearly asked me to do. And that's where the road divides. These guys were following something called the Shema. Anybody ever heard of the Shema before? Deuteronomy chapter 6. This was a sum total teaching of Israel. Don't turn to it. Just let me read it for you. This was before the Ten Commandments, and this was all of Israel, all of the followers of God in that day. This was their teaching in a nutshell, and this is what it says. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Now that word there's Jehovah. It's translated into Adonai so they can write it in Scripture. It's the holiest word that they have, the holiest concept and descriptor of God that they have, a word that they wouldn't even speak out. And it says, Hear, O Israel, Jehovah is one. And then here comes the rest of the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk on the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hand. Bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your house and on your gates. And so all the way along in Babylon, maybe my name now is Shadrach, and I got a new culture, and I'm learning a new language, and I'm learning some new customs, and I'm doing the thing of Babylon. But in my heart, when I'm walking back and forth, I'm remembering the things that I've been taught from when I was a kid by my parents who were taught by their parents. And that is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. Not multitude, not many, not some joker that's 90 feet high. One God over all gods, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Jesus picks up on this in Matthew, right? When they say, what's the greatest commandment? He goes right back to the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. He was saying to his audience, this is the core, this is what it's all about. And these guys have got this bound on their hands, bound on their heads, and bound in their hearts. And the king says, you got to bow down. And they come, it's very simple what they say. The way they respond to him is pretty amazing. He brings them in, he reminds them again, hey guys, maybe you didn't get it. The trumpets play, the flutes play, the musicians play, and you bow down. And if you don't bow down, you're going in the fiery furnace. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. You got it? Good. Everybody's clear? Okay, because they were telling me you weren't bowing down. I told them you just didn't understand, so now everybody's clear, right? Wrong. And look at what it says. It's pretty amazing in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar. Notice that they addressed him properly. They didn't say, look, Jack. There was respect in them. Part of excellence in moving ahead with wisdom and tact is respect. Well, my boss doesn't deserve respect. Well, neither did Nebuchadnezzar. Dude had a dream, got it interpreted, got a word from God, basically, and then he built an idol. That doesn't deserve respect. But they didn't say, hey, look, bud, let me tell you something, brother. They said to him, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. In other words, we're not calling in the cavalry. We're not throwing up some giant defense. We're just, this is pretty simple for us. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, verse 17, the God we serve is able to save us from it. Because he asked earlier, he says, if we throw you in the furnace, what God's going to save you from that? Our God is. Our God can. He can save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. Again, respect. Verse 18, but even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, respect, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Well, Nebuchadnezzar loses it. He loses his mind. And he tells the guys, heat that thing up as hot as it's ever been heated before. Heat it 7 times hotter than it is right now. And they're like, 7 times? Okay, fine. They're throwing stuff in the thing and they're jacking this thing up. Then he says, get the strongest guys, bind these guys up with their clothes on. Don't even strip them down. Bind them up with their robes, their tunics, the whole thing, their hats, and throw them in there. So they do. They bind up these guys. They drag them to the opening of this furnace and they get ready to throw them in. Guess what? Some of the soldiers dragging them in get consumed by the heat of the fire and are incinerated incinerated in the process of throwing them in. They get some more people to throw them in. They got now a tag team effort of people trying to push them in without getting burned up. Imagine how frustrated you'd be. If you were just a faithful servant of Nebuchadnezzar, you'd bow down every time the music played, but you got burned up in the fiery furnace. This is not fair, right? But finally they get them in there. They get them into the fiery furnace. And when they put them in the fiery furnace, the smoke comes out the top. And the king says, "What's happening in there? I told you to put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in there. You put 3 people in there, right?" They say, "We put 3 people in there." He says, "I see 4 people in there. And the 4th one," this is what he says in Scripture, "looks like a son of the gods." To which you want to go, "Congratulations, bro, you nailed that one right there." If that's the money question, you win. He not only looks like a son of the gods, he is the Son of God. Jesus Christ has entered into the story, and he does that every time we're thrown in the fiery furnace. Every time he enters into the story. And all of a sudden now, there's 1, 2, 3 guys, and I love it. Jesus got the little white robe on with the little sash and the beard and the whole thing. New Testament Jesus apparently is in there. And the king says, "Get him out." And they get him out. And their clothes aren't singed, they don't smell, their hair's not burned down. They're sniffing on them. It says all the satraps and all the officials and the magicians come around, start poking on them and smelling on them and tugging on them, and they look normal. And Nebuchadnezzar, once again, he has a revelation. He goes, "Okay, I get it. Your God's God." He said, "These guys, put them in charge. Give them a reward. And anybody who says anything against their God, they're going in the fiery furnace." It's amazing how Jesus moves towards this moment. It's amazing. This story, I wish we could spend 5 weeks in Daniel because it's amazing. Next chapter, king has another dream. He goes nuts. He becomes sane. He dies. His son Belshazzar becomes the king. Bad news. Belshazzar is a total reprobate. He cannot wait to become king. And as soon as he becomes king, you know what he does? He throws a party and gets the goblets and the serving utensils that they took out of the temple in Jerusalem, and he throws a party with them. He's got God's altar pieces full of his wine, toasting it up with people. Cheers, everybody. So much for the God of Jerusalem, so much for the God of Judah, so much for the God of those people. Cheers, everybody, and let's hear it for Babylon. That's not the way you want to play it right there. So a hand comes in, starts writing on the wall. You know where that phrase came from? I saw the handwriting on the wall, literally came and wrote on the wall. Mene, mene, tekel, parsin. And they're all looking at it going, "What is that? That's the weirdest thing we've ever seen. Something's writing on the wall. What does it say?" Get the interpreters. They can't figure it out. Daniel, of course, comes in, figures it out. It says, "Mene, mene, tekel, parsin." What does that mean? It says, you've been weighed up on the scales. You don't measure up, and you're going down. God bless you. That night, Belshazzar died. And Darius the Mede, okay, another kingdom, comes in and takes over Babylon. Darius takes a quick, I'm just closing with a little overview, takes a quick look around. He goes, "Okay, I need 120 guys to run this place." Okay, you're the 120. I need 3 guys to run the 120. Daniel, you're one of the 3. You're one of my top 3 guys. I mean, I just tell you're going to be one of the top 3 to run the 120 who are going to run all Babylon. For me, Darius, king of the Medes. So he puts it all in motion. But once again, there are people there who despise Daniel because of his faith. Look, we're in a war, people. And our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not about a supervisor. It's not about a boss. It's not about somebody who comes in and takes over your company, or a new teacher, a new principal, a new coach. It's a spiritual war going on. And some people don't even know they're pawns in a spiritual battle. So we can't get so angry with people like we're fighting people, when Ephesians 6 says we're fighting the principalities, the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And that was even true in Daniel's day. So these guys come up with a plot, simple plot. Hey, King Darius, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a new decree. Anybody who bows down and worships anything other than you gets put to death. And, Darius is fine with that. He's like, okay, that sounds great to me. I'm Darius. I'm in charge. I'm powerful. Nobody can stand against me. So yeah, new decree. Write it out. Anybody who worships anybody other than me dies. They said, yeah, we got it. We passed it. Stamp it right here. Put your signet ring on it. He does. And then they're like, all right, this is going to work out great. Because they know Daniel is devout. Darius doesn't. I don't think he'd had the faith conversation with Daniel yet. He had just had the can you run my 120 guys conversation. Absolutely. And he thought, man, you passed. You're in charge. You're one of the three who are running the show here. And then he didn't say, now tell me about your story with God. He just put him in charge. And he was thrilled to have him in charge. He did not know that he was a faithful Jew, but these other jokers did. And so here's Daniel, right? And he is praying like he does 3 times a day in front of his window. And as he's praying, this is probably my favorite flannel board story in the history of flannel board. Some of these other guys came and looked in the window. And they saw him praying. And moreover, they whipped out iPhones and took photos of him praying because Steve Jobs had revolutionized the culture of the day. And they went back to Darius and they said, now you made a decree, right? Yes. What was the decree? Anybody who worships anybody other than me dies, right? That's what you said, right? You signed it, right? Right? Okay, check this out. There's your brother. There's your boy Daniel, Belteshazzar. What's he doing? He goes back to his room 3 times a day and he prays to his God. I love this moment because Darius had a huge dilemma. Oh, he was going to kill him, but he didn't want to. And this is just another little side note. They may fire you, but just make sure they don't want to. Isn't that awesome? I got a call from so-and-so in New Jersey, and I hate this, but I'm going to have to let you go. Because blah, blah, blah went down, and turns out you're a man of faith, and turns out you wouldn't cook the books, or turns out you're a woman of faith, and you wouldn't be seen in that place or put yourself in that compromising situation. And, word came down, and you're out of here. And I hate it. I hate losing you. I do not want to let you go. I do not want to kick you off our team. I do not want to put you out because you're the best that we've got. I don't care who you praying to 3 times a day. It's working because you're one of the top 3 in the nation. But he didn't have a choice, so he put Daniel in the lion's den. And when Daniel went in the lion's den, it was all coming down. But you know what? Even Darius had a clue. I think Darius had gone and done some background checking. And I think that he had gone and asked some people, who is this guy? What's this praying? He goes, oh, you should hear the story of these cats. These boys of Babylon, they just keep turning it out. They just keep leading the way. And no matter what happens, God just shows up. They're God. I mean, there's story after story after story, and he's like, wow. And now he's putting the pieces together. And so he says, put him in the lion's den. But that night, Darius, you know how the story goes, right? Coming to the end. That night, Darius didn't have any entertainers. He just shut the lights out on the royal palace and said, I'm going to eat in my room tonight. I don't want anything happening around here because I'm going to think all night long about what's going on with Daniel. And I think he was hoping against hope that the stories of the past were going to come true in the future. And so the first thing he does when he wakes up, he goes to the place and he's like, Daniel, are you in there? Now, who would even ask that question if he wasn't already being motivated and moved by the faith that Daniel had? He wouldn't even gone, but we went and asked the question because faith was building. Isn't it awesome when we are so excellent, backed up with such great character, fueled by such great faith, that even the people around us are starting to think, you know what? I think their God's probably going to come through. I don't know how, I don't believe any of this stuff. I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe anything about raised from the dead. But you know what? I wouldn't put it past that girl. Her God comes through. Golly, what a powerful thing for the king of the Medes. This dude's in history, by the way. You can Wikipedia him. We're not talking about Bible stories. We're talking about history. That the king of the Medes went in the morning because he thought, you know what? God just might come through for this guy. God didn't ever come through for anybody that went in the lion's den. I mean, these guys, I'm not sure about those guys, but they starved these guys so that it would be fast and furious entertainment and sport. But when he got there in the morning, it turns out an angel had come in the night. And the angel had spent the night with Daniel. I don't know who the angel was. But when you get in the fire and you get in the den, God sends people to your aid. Daniel said, I'm in here. Got 2 male lions and a female lion and an angel. And we're all good. Everybody's good. I haven't hurt the lions and everything's all right. And Darius like, I knew it. Woo! Get him out. Because see, I just said, you got to throw him in there. That's all I said was, I signed the thing, you throw him in there. We threw him in there. Get him out of there. Now, all you guys that threw him in there, you're going in there. You and your families are going in there. This was not good for the families, right? So they took Daniel out, and the angel left with him, and they threw the families in. We don't want to show you that, kids. And they threw the families in, and wiped them out. I don't understand this either, but I mean, it was a wipeout. And at the end of the day, what does Darius do? Darius says, praise be to the God of Daniel. Let there be a decree issued. Praise be to the God of Daniel. Isn't that awesome? And so I just want to close with this tonight. I mean, here we are, okay? You're like, Louis, I love it. I want to be excellent. I want to use my gifts and abilities. I'm not sure I've been doing that. I think I might have settled for being average. I think I might have taken a shortcut. In fact, I'm taking a lot of shortcuts, and man, my heart's unsettled about that tonight. I might be the one who sweeps out the stadium, but I can do that and be the best stadium sweeper-outer that's ever lived. Knowing that while I'm sweeping out that stadium, God's preparing me for something else. Or I might be the star of the game. I might be the all-star. But I know that even in that, God's preparing me for another role in another time, in another place, in his unfolding story. But somebody jumped off at the end, and I just want to address you as we close. Somebody jumped off at the end because you said, yeah, 4 guys came out of the fire looking good, and Daniel had pets. I lost my job, Louis, and I've been unemployed for a year and a half now. My wife walked out on me because of my faithfulness to God. And I'd like to say that I came through it unscathed, but look at me. And I just want to say out loud tonight that every time we don't walk out of the fiery furnace, not every time. Sometimes when the road divides and some guy who thinks he has more power than he has makes a decree, and there is no choice because God's words are bound on your arms and hands and head and heart. You don't make it out of the fire. You're like, what are you talking about? Well, let's just think about some people who were burned up in the fiery furnace. Let's start with Jesus. Oh, but he got raised from the dead 3 days later. Yes, he did. But he got crucified on Friday. And he died that afternoon. And they buried him before sundown. But was God at work? Absolutely. Was God's plan being thwarted by these guys who thought they had all this power and authority? No. Pilate, who knows where he is today? Who cares? Nobody's talking about him today. There are no churches meeting celebrating Pilate today. There's no churches meeting celebrating any Roman emperors today. There's nobody gathering anywhere celebrating Darius the Mede today. Not one person on the planet Earth. Nobody cares about Belshazzar or Nebuchadnezzar or Jehoiakim. Nobody cares about any of them. They thought they had power. They thought they were in charge. They were not in charge, and they didn't have real power. But the God who oversees the affairs of your life and my life and their lives, that God has all power and all authority, and they're gone and we're still talking about him. They're done and we're still talking about Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, because our God is a great God and he is over all the affairs of life. And here's the real story at the end of the day tonight. It doesn't matter which furnace, if you get in the furnace. What matters is which furnace. Because everybody's going to bow down to something. And everybody's going to have their life burn up for something. And just like Jesus and Paul after him, just like Stephen, and just like Peter, and just like the apostles and the church fathers, just like this pastor brother in Iran right now, who's facing death for simply being a Christian pastor in Iran and leading the house church movement of Iran. The world speaks out, so now they've come back and trumped up false charges against him. Now they say he's raped somebody and they're going to kill him for that, because now the world says we can't kill him for being a follower of Jesus. Listen, every day in this world on some continent, somebody gives their life for Christ. And sometimes the stories tell us he swoops in and it's a dramatic Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and sometimes they die. But what do you think is more powerful, honestly? And I say this in all humility. What's more powerful, when they come out of the fiery furnace or when they go into the fire and their life is consumed? And the people standing around go, what kind of faith is this? What has this God done in their hearts? What kind of power has this God displayed? What kind of God must he be that they were willing to roll the dice and risk everything to honor him and to follow him with their lives? And there is nothing more powerful than that in Babylon, than to say, look, I know God can deliver me. I got no doubt my God can deliver me, but even if he doesn't, I'm not bowing down to that, because I've already bowed down to Jesus, and he's got the name above every single name. If you're in the fire tonight, I just want to encourage you. When Stephen in Acts was being stoned to death for preaching the gospel, the last thing he saw was Jesus standing up at the right hand of God. It was Jesus saying, I've been there. I understand what it means to pay the ultimate price. I understand what it means when the roads diverge. I am with you. I see you. I'm in touch with you. I am honoring you. I am standing on your behalf, and I'm going to welcome you into my presence. And 1 second from now, I'm going to put my arms around you and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for being that kind of a witness in a world that's looking for something that's sure and true.